Hello, welcome to On Second Thought with Mike and Luke, an ongoing conversation about ideas and current events in which we explore the underlying connections and root causes that help us discover what is really true and can even help shape and reshape the focus of our lives. Today, we're going to talk about woke. What is woke? And we're going to talk about bullies, and it just happens to be a coincidence that maybe woke and bullies fit in the same sentence together, but we'll see where we go from there.
I think it's a different kind of bully.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have all this stuff that I've prepared to say on woke, and I've done a little research and written my own thoughts. Bully is not even in it, but it's so very, very true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a note here, bully, on the woke note.
Okay, so I have a quick thought.
All right,
you do that.
What do you got?
So my quick thought was about being right versus not being wrong.
Yeah, we were just chatting about this teeny bit.
So
right
one of the things I noticed as a dad of teenagers. So when they're teenagers, I start to hold their standard high, like to what I want them to be as adults. Right?
Sure.
When they're little, you don't do that.
Yeah.
And so the things that bother me that they do, I realize in those moments that it's a standard I hold to myself. Right? That I just
Your values start.
I wasn't paying attention to what I do. I just do it.
That's right.
And so one of the things is when one of my kids is confident and wrong, it just grinds my teeth, right? And I realized how much I might say it this intensely, I never want to be in that position. And I think it's because I want people to believe me when I speak.
Yeah. I know.
There's also a pride thing to it, right?
Of course.
But if I'm confident, if I say something definitively, I want to be 100% that I'm, and that's been tough. I mean, we've talked about the news a lot.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of issues that I've taken bold stands on in recent years, like around COVID. You know, I had friends who came out against the COVID lockdowns and mandates way before I did. It took me kind of 2 or 3 months. I think it was April or May to say publicly, I think we need to stop this.
Yeah.
But part of it was
a little open at first.
Well, I was I was skeptical in the beginning. I thought it would be come and go pretty quickly, and then it didn't. But because I was looking at the data. I don't remember if you remember early on, everybody was talking about Italy, and it was like going through Italy, and everybody was sort of freaking out about that, and there was all these deaths.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine sent me the data, and it was like average age of death was like 82.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, that's not what they're saying it is, right? And so then the reaction in the U.S. kept ramping up.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait, don't they know?
Yeah.
And so I was saying, well, maybe there's something I don't know. And I was sort of watching it.
Yes, yeah.
And as the data, so when they started publishing, we got to flatten the curve. I was daily looking at the Oregon Health Authority data, and they had this big curve and predicting. But then I noticed that the hospitalizations was what flattening the curve was about. And on the graph, it was like down at the bottom, and it was barely anything. And I thought,
yeah.
there was so much. Man, we could point it.
But it's a process of getting to what's true.
Right. But there are times when I also always want to be right, where I want to be the authority on all the things, right? I want people to do what I say and I want to avoid that. Personally, I do. I think it's the difference between trying to be correct in yourself and trying to be overbearing with what you know or assert.
Do you notice people that they don't care if they're wrong or right based on their personality? They're wrong about something and it's, and move on. Nary a thought in the world, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever envy that personality?
No.
I have.
Really?
Yeah. Because they make mistakes so easily and it's okay.
Oh, and they move on easily.
And I struggle with that.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I don't want to be wrong. I don't like being wrong.
But so nobody is like that who performs at a high level, though. Isn't that true? If you're going to perform on anything at a high level,
that's probably
you have
true.
to hold that kind of teeth grinding. I can't allow for that slip. But you're right. It steals away what you might find peace.
And I think that there's certain. So I didn't think about the high level. I think you're probably right on that. Take the high level out though. It does probably go. The territory is personality types. So that when you enjoy what's true and you've learned that you have a capacity for it, it's an element like gifting, and you want to do well with it. Somebody else is gifted in other ways of just maybe, let's say a social butterfly. I was with somebody this weekend and they are a social butterfly. They don't need to be right. They are wrong a lot. It doesn't bother them. They just like connecting with people. That's like they start working in that gifting,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, there's a technical side to it. So, in other words, the things about which you and I want to be correct are usually technical things, like how things work, how things should
Yeah.
be built or run.
Yeah.
Versus if you said, "Oh, I forgot your birthday," or "I forgot," that
Yes,
kind of
that's
thing.
true. That's true.
That's different.
They're the things that have more weight and significance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which is worse? Which is preferable, to not be wrong or to be right? Which would you prefer? Or what causes the most angst? Or I don't know. Answer it either direction, I guess.
I hate to say something confidently that then I find out is not
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It just stirs
In
me.
Moneyball, the main character ends up the Oakland A's lose, and he goes, "I hate losing. I love winning, but I hate losing more."
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that's the same with me. I do like to be right, but I don't care as much. I don't really gloat. I mean, I might a little bit and not even be aware of it, but that's not that big. But I hate to be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm mad at myself if I'm wrong.
Right.
I'm upset
That's
with
right.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to have got it right. I wanted to have gathered the information correctly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also noticed that in that area, what ends up happening for me is, because I think you and I share some of this, is being right becomes important because you have found that you have been helpful to people.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I want to keep being helpful.
Right.
And it's like, this is something I bring to the relationships.
Well, and there's
and
a
whatnot.
there is, and maybe this is true going way back, is that sense of satisfaction at being useful. That people
Yes,
think,
that's
oh,
right.
if
That's
I
right.
need to know this, if I need something,
right.
I just ask Luke.
That's right. That's right.
And that kind of
That's
like,
right.
yes, that's what I want.
And those are good things until God takes some of them away for a season.
Yeah.
And your things are not in operation.
Well, and positions, right? So, I mean, I was a teacher for years and years. When I became a principal, suddenly that was who I was. I was the one people ask.
Yeah, right.
And
right,
it was like,
right.
oh,
I know. That's the
that
same with
feeling
pastoring.
of like, it feels good.
It's the same with pastoring. Okay, let's segue from being truthful and not truthful. We're backdoor into one of my notes, but James O'Keefe recently had an undercover. He's restarted his program, which is something OMG.
Yeah, O'Keefe Media Group.
Yeah, O'Keefe me, which I thought was pretty
OMG,
clever.
that's pretty, yeah.
It was clever. Anyway, he has the same guy that broke the Pfizer, who recorded the Pfizer guy admitting that they knew all this stuff about the vaccines and all this. He interviewed somebody, a producer at Fox News. And so there's 7 minutes of video on there, and they've got it. It's a raw footage. And he says that Tucker Carlson was a part of the deal, the settlement deal with Dominion. It was actually literally a part of not just $787 million settlement, but that they had to can Tucker Carlson.
Plus Tucker. Which is, I think
What do you
Fox
think of
News
that?
is now, it's the Bud Light of cable news.
I completely agree.
I don't see how they survive this.
Well,
I mean, they'll
think
be
they'll
around,
survive. Yeah.
be around, but it's to
But
us. it'll
what
be
they
nothing.
were will be no more.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it being a part of the deal? So you're Dominion, I'm Fox. We end up thinking you've got something on me. Why do I give you nearly $1 billion when I don't have to? You're never going to win the libel suit. You don't win those without showing intent. It just can't be done.
So what I heard them say, somebody say, was that it's not winning the suit that matters. It's avoiding discovery.
Yes. So because what's in discovery?
What's all the texts, all the emails relevant
Yeah.
to,
So that must mean you know enough to push me for $1 billion because you know I don't want that out.
even if what's found in discovery has nothing to do with Dominion.
Yes, exactly.
It's still significant enough that it's worse than
that
losing
is
$1
my
billion.
thought too. But that means as a Dominion person, you know enough about that you're not only pushing for the money, which makes me look like I really did collude and Fox has been wrong all along about the January 6th stuff and about immigration and the insurance companies or the pharmaceuticals. But you also can say get rid of the guy who the left hates the most.
Yeah.
That's pretty. So you must know something of what's in these texts or emails. I mean, that's a big ask, and you're holding your ground. You're not budging.
Right.
I
don't know. It's
this
crazy.
is a killer to Fox.
Right.
Do you think they settled this with Dominion? Which would be worse, losing Tucker Carlson or the emails and texts coming out?
Yeah. I mean, it must have been both ways.
They must have.
In other words,
yeah.
they would lose it either way. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the least worst.
Yes, that's what I think too. So I think that's just interesting.
But does that speak to the corrupt nature of how, these cable networks work? Or maybe the Murdoch family and how they do things, that because there's so many underhanded backroom deals around politics.
Yep.
And those cable networks are intertwined with every political actor, if not more powerful at times.
Yeah.
Than say your run-of-the-mill House member, but even senators.
I do think it tends to be supportive of those people who are agnostic and they want to back out and say both cables, all the networks are corrupt. Both parties are corrupt. And
you're not going to get arguments from me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you'll still get a little pushback from me, but because I don't like the totality of the argument.
Well, what I don't like is the sense of giving up. Like,
Yes,
what are you
that's
do?
what I mean.
Right?
That's what I mean.
I heard
that's
somebody
why I called it agnostic. I just don't know, and you can't know.
Right. I've heard it called the black pill. Right. If you've heard of the red pill.
Yeah.
Right. The Matrix reference.
Yeah.
So when you take the black pill, you're saying I give up. The whole thing's and
the whole thing's corrupt.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, listening to a podcast, that a vote for DeSantis is a belief that the right policy, the right leadership, can make can right the ship.
Right.
And a vote for Trump is just saying screw you to the system.
Yeah. That's an interesting.
And the commentator's reply to that was, if you think there's no policy or leadership that can right the ship, then we're already at war.
Yeah.
Like, it's over.
That's right.
And that's voting for, you're not gonna meme your way to freedom.
Yeah. Okay, what do you think about O'Keefe? We off camera said this briefly, but I talked about being right. What do you think about O'Keefe willing to lie to uncover what is being concealed?
Yeah, right.
What do you think about that? Because I have concerns. I'm not sure if I think that's good or not.
I mean,
it's effective.
Journalists are famous, right, for saying to their subject, "I'm on your side," and then betraying them after the fact in the story.
Okay, that's fair. But they're burning a source when they do that.
Correct. Yeah.
They'll get a reputation eventually. This is like a pre-burn.
But what you're talking about more is the ethical question.
It is.
Of lying.
In order to get to the truth.
Undercover. Yeah. I mean, so the way I think of it in Christian terms, right?
Yeah.
There's two big roles I think of as far as how Christianity interacts with the outside world. Missionaries are upfront and open, declaring and facing the consequences of that declaration to a world that might be hostile.
To their own hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's also spies, right? There's Joshua and the spies who go into the land. They're hiding in the roof, right? There's Rahab, the prostitute, who becomes a hero of our faith for concealing and putting more trust in their God than in the local power structures and political systems and deities that she was raised in. And what does she do to exhibit that faith? She lied and misdirected the agents of corruption, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's spying is a part of war.
So I had not thought of it in that way. Yeah, spying is a part of war because in life you don't owe the same level of truth to everybody. So the whole, high school or college dilemma, you're in a boat and the Nazis are going to come, or the worst one is the baby's crying.
Oh yeah.
Right. And
that's not about truth though. That's just about.
But it is this ethical dilemma of saving a bunch of lives and trying to silence and, deaths occurred. Or you're hiding them in your walls and they come and they say, do you have any people here? And you say, no, this kind of dilemma.
See, to me, that's always seemed so easy.
That part, I think
I grew up reading The Hiding Place.
Yes. So that part doesn't bother me. I had never put the O'Keefe in that category.
Well, if what he's doing, and this is where journalism gets suspect, I think, if what you're doing is to declare the truth and uphold what's good, then lying to obtain that, I think, is part of it.
Deception is a part of war.
Yeah. Right.
That's interesting. I'll have to think about that more. Okay, you got some stuff on bullies. We'll do bullies before we do woke.
All right,
then then we'll tie them together. That way it'll be easier.
Yeah. Okay.
You do bullies. What do you got?
So
what are you thinking?
I had a moment of infamy as a school principal. I made a video
Oh
about
yes, I
bullying.
saw this.
Yeah, and it went viral a little bit. It went on the news, and several thousand people watched this short video that I was making that I thought
Which is still
30
up
people would
online, but
watch.
blacked out. You can just hear.
Yeah,
Grayed out or
actually,
whatever.
Yeah, I was making parenting videos after work, but in the office of the school. And so when all that stuff hit the fan, the school said, you can't portray the school building.
Which, if nothing had happened, they were upset with, they wouldn't have cared. But
I mean, they had seen the video before it went viral. It was up for a couple weeks, and then one parent contacted the news. Anyway, I saw somebody talking about the way the bullying is like the massive thing as far as schools go. If a school is getting in trouble, it's very often about bullying, right? That they didn't protect my kid, et cetera, et cetera. But you hear, if you talk to someone older, everybody's got a story of being bullied, right? And my understanding now is that the more they fought bullying, the worse it's gotten. I don't think it's gotten better in the last 10 years. But maybe it has. I think different schools, I mean, I never saw a significant amount of bullying as a principal. What I would see is kids being bossy to each other and that getting labeled as bullying.
Right.
But I mean, I watched a video once that one of my teachers was showing to kindergarten, and basically in this little cartoon video teaching kids about bullying, every unkind thing that someone did to you was getting labeled bullying.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, that kid took my pencil, bullying, right? That kid told me to get out of his way, bullying. And it's like, that is not what that is. And so
that's right.
What we talked about is there's being rude, which is like unintentionally harming someone's feelings, being, not regarding someone else. There's being mean, which is I'm angry and I take it out on you.
Yeah.
But that's not bullying either.
Not classical bullying.
No, bullying is I target you for aggression based on your position in the social order.
Yeah.
So I see you as a lower, on the lower rung.
Yeah.
And so therefore I'm going to exert my power over you and I'm going to be aggressive towards you. Right. That's classic bullying.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Not
the word gets thrown
redefined.
around for everything.
Yeah.
At any rate, if part of what I've seen in my experience is that dads often will say to the kid, you handle it, right? You don't need to ask for help for everything. You got a kid bullying you. You put a stop to it. They'll leave you alone. And I saw that work.
The old school is they teach the kid to fight.
Right. No, yeah. So I saw a kid, he was punching somebody in the arm in line, right? Someone who's not his friend. They're not interacting in a friendly back and forth. He's just pushing the button, right? And the kid he was punching wasn't low in the social order, but quiet, right? So he kind of knew like, oh, this kid's not going to fight back. A little bit of that.
Yeah.
But what the quiet kid did is turn around and just shoved the kid to the ground.
Okay.
Right. And it was in line. And so they both got sent to me fighting.
Yeah.
But they both agreed that was the story.
Yeah.
And so to the kid who was being punched and shoved, I said, nice job. Go back to lunch. Right.
Yeah.
And to the kid who's punching, I said, he could have punched you in the face and I still wouldn't have been in trouble. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
But this kid had, it was a long story of history of this kind of stuff, but it never happened to that kid again.
Yeah.
The quiet kid was never the target.
Yeah.
And so what I see right now in our culture, and I heard someone saying this, and there's a lot of people who are jerks for fun on the internet. And I think it was probably one of these people, but he was saying all this craziness that we see, not just pink hair, but all the weird TikTok videos of people wanting affirmation for whatever perverse, sexual habits or not even sexual, just demands, right, that they're making on people. And the guy's comment was, if we just had a few bullies, this would have been handled.
If we just had a few bullies, this would have been handled.
In other words, bullies enforce the social order.
Yes.
Right? So
they'd be too afraid to be stupid.
Yes. So I studied Japanese in high school. I lived in Japan for a couple months early as a teacher.
Yeah.
And one of the things Japan has an intense social order, right? The social, you conform, the pressure to conform is really high. But at the same time, I observed little kids are spoiled in Japan. So the mothers barely correct kids at all, basically keep them safe and give them what they want. But then by the time they're in middle school, they're rigid in their behavior. Who's creating this rigidity? Who's disciplining these kids? Because the moms clearly aren't. And what I found was the kids were. The kids were inflicting on each other a very strict conduct requirement, to the extent where bullying was not only extensive throughout their schools, but accepted. Because
hierarchical behavior.
Not around hierarchy necessarily. There's always going to be some of that, but a demand for you will behave or else. And so if a kid, the Japanese proverb that would get used a lot is the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Like if you think you're going to be cool and different, we're going to make sure you understand that's not allowed here. And so there's very little of that in U.S. schools, but now it's coming back, but it's coming back on the other side, which is if you don't use the pronouns, if you don't go along, right? My mom works for the Republicans, and they were selling Trump T-shirts at the fair last summer. Trump's not running last summer.
Yeah.
But all these teenagers are coming up buying Trump shirts because if you want to be a rebel, you wear a Trump shirt to school, and it's going to make everybody
For
mad.
us, it's the nail. People want to stand out on purpose.
That's what I'm
going
saying.
to stand out more than somebody else.
Right.
Or at an angle that nobody else has.
But but that is the conformity now.
Yes, that's
you
right.
conform by being as weird and different as you can be.
Right.
And so the people who say, well, I'm going to be traditional in my views and in my behavior, now that's the person that stands out and gets scrutinized, maybe attacked, maybe bullied from the other side.
I was just with somebody from the East Coast who's visiting over here the last few days, and they came through Portland and spent a little time dinner. And the comment to me was, you guys got some weird looking people.
Yeah.
But they're all the same weird.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
It's true.
And he goes, nobody in the East Coast where nobody would look like this. But I realized over time, just over the course of an evening, there's a lot of people, and it's the same kind of weird.
Right.
They're just, first I thought it was unique, but no, it's not that.
It's like when we were in high school and you'd see the punk rock goth kids out on the street smoking.
Yeah.
Across, you're not allowed to do it on school grounds, so they're out on the sidewalk.
We call them the stoners.
The stoners, yeah. They all dress the same.
I know.
They're rebelling in conformity.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So the social role of bullies.
Every team
then,
has a uniform, I think. That's what it is.
Would you say? So take it out of the Japanese context because you were illustrating with that, and put it in here. Would you say? Are you trying to say that the bully, though not a good thing, yet plays a role of learning?
Well, I think there are two kinds of bullies. I mean, there's maybe dozens, right?
Yeah.
So there's people who are enforcing the social order and saying, this is how we do it. We don't do it that way. And we would actually train kids. We called it bystander training, to intervene in a positive way against someone who's trying to exert
Enforcement,
power.
yeah.
Right. But if you went to a school and there was a kid bullying, a Christian kid for saying that being gay is not right.
Yeah.
Well, nobody would intervene, and that's acceptable.
Yes, that's right.
So part of it too is there is a penchant for cruelty that's on the rise among people generally, a dehumanization of even people within your sphere, within your community. And I think we've been trained to do that more by the anonymity that the internet provides, so that people, it's sort of like when you're in your car.
I agree with that.
When you're in your car, it's easy to get mad at the other car.
That's right.
Versus if you were actually like in line to get on the bus and they cut you off, you wouldn't scream at them give them the finger because they're right there. They're a human.
That's right.
And the internet is that times 10.
I know it. Yeah. That's totally true. Well, so it sounds to me, in a sense, when you have bullying being redefined down to meanness or other things like that, it dilutes it and becomes a nothing. Because my wife's a teacher, and the biggest way to get the attention of a teacher in an issue is to throw the word bully in the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Their ears perk up and they have to respond, and but it's just thrown in willy-nilly.
It's the go-to.
It becomes meaningless. But then the other side is, obviously, significant bullying is unhelpful and damaging, but there's a certain place in there in which it actually does a good thing. But then your point is, if the social order is being redefined, then it does a good thing, but it might be a bad thing,
Well, and so one of the other things is there's a lot of social science around how boys and men deal with conflict versus women and girls. And women and girls, their pattern is less physical aggression and more reputation destruction, gossiping.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so if you look at how bullying plays out in schools now, it's much more
It's
feminized.
feminine and kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Meanness from girls and boys is very interesting. It's like on the same scale, but it totally looks different. Hey, before woke, I want to ask you one more question here because I've seen your notes. LED bulbs and beauty. I'm curious of what your. I have a guess.
Okay,
but I'm curious.
There's a guy I follow who's an artist and a conservative, and he was talking about I think it was more of a rant but he was talking about how softer lighting, warmer tones, are more appealing. They're more attractive. They're calming to the eye. It's like a campfire and a sunset, and that these harsh, bright. It's not that they're
glaring,
bright, cold tones that
cold.
LEDs generally create.
That's right.
Is destroying. He said it's a part of a targeted effort to destroy everything that's beautiful. And the reason that spoke to me was looking at things like architecture. We've been looking at designing City Hall here in town, and looking at how, especially in Oregon, like our state capitol. I saw a picture of our original state capitol, and it's incredible. It's this Georgian architecture, big dome.
Yeah.
And now it's this marble monstrosity. It's just like it's like you took out all the detail and all the connection to tradition and made this weird symbol.
Yeah.
Right.
When you're saying that,
they want to destroy beauty because beauty's connected to tradition and nature and a lot of what
God.
And from it, God. That's right.
Yeah. You reminded me of when you were saying that Tolkien, part of the Lord of the Rings, part of what he's doing is he's in the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
He's born in the late 1800s, and he thinks it's garish and that man-made cities and machinery. That's why, Sauron's machines are cutting down trees.
Right.
Right. And so he's purposely setting those in opposition to one another. And it's interesting because while that was taken from an environmental perspective and certain people ran with it, there is something theological underlining that. And that is, I think, in the fallen nature of man, we corrupt the beauty we create.
Yeah.
We can't create beauty the way we were intended. So the only beauty that exists for us without a corruption, in a sense, not without decay, but without corruption, is the beauty of nature that God made.
Yeah.
Now it's under a curse. There is some decay in it, but it has beauty. When we try to add to it, which we're called to do, I think, as people, we can have some limited success, but it also has deep corruption in it.
Right.
And so I think it just points to the fact that we just can't do what we were meant to do. And our efforts fall short. And so we're like making LED lights and God made the sun, right?
Right. Well, but if you look at art is like the art industry, you might say, if that's a word, is funded by wealthy people and their sense of the cool new thing. But art for a long time has been totally devoid of the pursuit of genuine beauty. It's now almost completely social political statements, right? And it's kind of a tax racket. I don't know if you've ever looked into how the art world works, but you buy a piece of art for little money, then your friends, who's the art dealer, appraises it for some higher value, then you auction it to someone else who buys it for millions, right? Or you donate it to an art gallery or a museum, and now it's millions, $1 million you donated, and so you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Right? You might have bought it for something cheap, and so it's a tax shelter. I've even heard of mutual funds now that just buy and sell art.
Oh my goodness!
Because the growth on it is so huge. But it also elevates these ideas about destroying the true and the beautiful.
Yeah,
which is what most art is about now.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about woke.
All right, fill me in. What are you thinking?
Well, the question is, what is woke? What does woke mean? What does it really mean?
Yeah, this was like a comeback a couple weeks ago that people on the left were like excited about.
Yes. So obviously it has an origin and it became a certain mainstream thing on the left, and then the right began to vilify the word. And now it's a word that has almost taken on a negative accusation in it, and the left is wanting to say, well, we shouldn't use this anymore.
Yeah, it's a slur even.
Yeah, it's a slur. So the context is that there was a lady who wrote a book, and she's being interviewed, and she caught a little flat-footed, and that's what made for the stir. She was asked for to define woke, says so a leftist liberal interviewer interviews this lady who writes this book. Well, define woke. She just wasn't expecting the question.
She sputtered.
And they kind of jumped on her. She played it off really well. She made fun of herself, and I blew that one. I wasn't prepared. But then she came out with a definition. Here's what she wrote.
Who is this?
Bethany Mandel.
Okay.
Let's see. The book, she says, is, well, anyway, I don't remember. It's about wokeism and as it affects children. I think Rising is the name. Rising. I don't remember the name of the book. Anyway, here's what she says. A radical belief system suggesting that our institutions are built around discrimination. That's the inherent, not inherent, what do they call it? Systemic racism, right?
Sure.
They're built around discrimination and claiming that all disparity, here's second point, is a result of that discrimination. It seeks a radical redefinition of society in which equality of group result, which we've talked about before, is the end point rather than equality of opportunity.
Yeah, equity, also known as.
Equity, yeah, also known as equity. Enforced by, and here's your point, an angry mob.
Yeah.
There's your bully role.
Right. Yeah.
So I got that, and then there's some people will read, and then this article writes about that and says, didn't like what she said, and writes this. Woke ideology asserts that the story of human history is best explained by an eternal struggle between the oppressor and the oppressed. But I think that's Marxism. Categories
When you say critical theory, that's what it means.
Yeah. Categories in this dichotomy are delineated along essentialist and immutable categories of identity, such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. People, irrespective of their individual life experience, are assigned to oppressor or oppressed categories, depending on an amalgamation of these characteristics, forming a hierarchy of victimhood.
Yeah,
Not
but
bad.
imagine you rolled that out off the tongue in the interview.
Yes, exactly. So I did a little more reading on it and see what people thought. And here's what I thought. I didn't like any of their definitions. I didn't disagree with anything said.
Yeah.
But what I didn't like is I didn't feel it got to the nature of what it was. And I came up with some of my own.
Oh, okay.
And with one fundamental idea, I think that woke is now, it's not a religion, it's a religious sentiment.
Yeah.
It's something religious is going on, not more than the Marxist thing, more than the critical thing, more than the victimhood, equality, the role of equality. What was the other thing she said? I'm not going to remember now. They were good points. Oh yeah, the disparity, discrimination, institutions built around it. Those are all true, but I think it's more than that. So I began to think about, and here's some of my ideas. First, and tell me. We'll do one, and then you tell me. And I've got a couple to mention. Woke, more of a religion. The first thing is the word itself, woke. Reminds me of the scripture, awake you sleeper.
Yeah.
So we would think of somebody becoming a Christian, we would say they woke up in a sense. They became awakened to what is true.
The Great Awakening.
The Great Awakening.
Yeah.
This is religious terminology. I don't think it's an accident. I think they are saying that to awaken to victimhood, to awaken to the oppression of a race or oppression of a gender is to awaken to what's real. And I didn't realize how bad it was before, and now I'm awake to this reality.
Okay.
I think it's not an accident that that's religious terminology.
So to me, it sounds like a conspiracy theory as well. That you're saying that the way the world is designed is that they're conspiring against people like me.
Yes.
Right. And so
Okay,
then
I'm good with that.
every system you look at, you say, oh, that one's doing it too. That one, everywhere you look.
So
There's
being
more
awake,
conspiracy.
when you wake up, you see it everywhere,
Right.
right? But here's the reality. They're not wrong,
Okay.
because we live in a world under the sway of an evil one, blinding the eyes of everybody. The reality is the whole fallen world, it's a conspiracy. It's not wrong that there's things hidden. So what happens, I think, in the natural world and flow of things when conspiracy-oriented people, there's something nagging at everything that what's not being seen here? What's not being said?
Right.
What am I not seeing? Why do I get a glimpse of something and then it's covered over? Because that's the more foundational reality of our life with demonic beings, and that we live a life that is being lied to and covered up and deceived, and we are believing it. The wool is being pulled over humanity's eyes at a more foundational level than politics.
But the other side of that too is if you've ever worked with someone who had some destructive social tendencies, one of the most common symptoms of that is that they read intention into everyone.
Right.
Oh, they're just trying to get power.
Yes.
They're just jealous.
Everything is to the extreme with that lens.
And so, and there is an assumption I've seen of I'm the only one who really understands people, right? And their hidden motives and the hidden meaning behind what they said.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's a messianic complex a little bit.
Yeah,
if we're trying to take this world we live in and tie it to underneath theologically and spiritually, this reality is also at play. The Messiah is the one who says, I know what's really going on.
Right.
And actually, he's the one that's correct on that. So I was blind, but now I see. I was dead, but now I'm alive. So it's almost like being woke in its sense of it started a regeneration or conversion.
Yeah.
It's a waking up, a religious waking. Then I began to think, you know what else woke is? And this is where I would put the things that I read. There are newly discovered truths. Which is what also happens in Christianity. You discover the truths that you didn't know.
Yeah, and it's sort of like saying, once I realize this, all of history is now explained.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
This is what religions claim.
Which makes it a frame of reference.
That's right.
Like it's very
That's
fundamental.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So I began to think of some of these in wokeness, and newly discovered truths. Trans rights are human rights. That's like, this is a religiously held phraseology. It's an insight. It's considered an insight. I tried to think of what are those things when we say, so when Bud Light does this thing and they go woke, I was trying to think of, forget the writing a book, forget the ideology. If you're just to say Disney went woke, what things precipitated you saying that? What is it that makes you feel that without trying to use ideology things?
So here's my thinking on that, and that is, they took a side. So in the past,
yes, I agree with that.
Right, Bud Light.
That's right.
Is making dumb frogs saying Bud Weiser, right?
Yeah.
So they're not taking a side on any of the culture issues.
Right.
They're saying
They're just trying to
come
sell
to
beer.
us for relief from all of that.
Yep.
And so when they come out and declare, no, we're on that side, not your side.
Yes.
It changes things.
Yes.
Right?
I became a Christian.
Check this out. This is urbandictionary.com.
All right.
Which, as dictionaries go, can I don't know if it's the
that's
most
fine.
reliable, but it's interesting. It says spiritual and intellectual enlightenment, like waking up from a deep sleep and seeing things clearly for the first time.
Is this definition of woke?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not look at that dictionary.
So
did look
woke.
it up.
Well, Urban
Yes.
Dictionary is like a crowdsourced. People put in their definitions.
Okay, read it again one more time.
Okay. Well, before I do,
Okay.
Each definition in Urban Dictionary is submitted by users and up or down voted,
Okay.
right? Based on how people use it.
Sure.
So the term
Democracy.
woke is actually an urban, like black culture term.
Okay.
I awoke. I got woke. And it's this shortening of the word awakening, right? Okay, so he says, spiritual and intellectual enlightenment, like waking up from a deep sleep and seeing things clearly for the first time. Quote, I never knew what really mattered in life. Now I'm woke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that definition is from 2018,
Yeah.
which is before most of this nonsense.
Yeah. So they had the spiritual idea there, which would be my connection to religious things. Because so then I was thinking, so for example, I've got in my notes here, our bodies, our choice, abortion. But see, I don't think abortion is woke. I think abortion itself has been but here's the newest thing. You shout your abortion now, right?
Yeah.
You trumpet it. It's like so abortion is not itself a woke issue. To be woke, it was to take it to this next level.
But what the woke ideology do, or I would actually call it critical theory, because the term woke, just like awakened, could be you could awaken to the reality of your need for Christ.
I
right?
know.
Yeah. So what critical theory does is it sees every issue, such as abortion, as being explained as a means of oppressing those
Right.
who are
Right.
historically.
That's the new twist, though.
Yeah. That's Marxism.
Yes.
I would say
agree.
it's Marxian.
Yes,
Meaning it's
I agree.
inspired and
Yeah,
originated
yeah.
from the Marxian
The
ideas.
problem with critical theory is you're not going to say, well, Bud Light went critical theory on us.
Yeah. No. Right. No, I think
So,
woke is still the right
yeah,
term
Yeah.
in the general use.
Yeah. There is evangelism that goes on. I started thinking about the elements. Actually, what I started thinking about was Rick Warren's five things, right? Which is pretty famous. The five, what's he called? Well, he's got evangelism, worship, hospitality.
These are spiritual practices.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
the five. There's five in his purpose-driven life thing, right?
Oh, okay. I never did read it.
Yeah.
I got a copy somewhere.
Theology or truth is one of them. And anyway, I started thinking about those, and in a sense, it's really just an expression of well-rounded things that are important in Scripture, right?
Yeah.
For the Christian. And I started thinking about those in light of woke. Does it have those same things? And it does.
Yeah.
It has them in every one. You know, there are people who are social justice warriors, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're righting wrongs, but it's under this rubric of being woke. You have indoctrinators. You have people, it's under this of teaching.
I saw a great little meme where it was a picture of a teacher saying, I'm indoctrinating my kids into this ideology, kind of using the jargon of the leftist teachers who are slipping in different references and undermining tradition.
That's right.
Parents. And then the second little picture says, I'm converting them to Christianity. And I thought, how many Christians are in public ed would never dream of even secretly trying to convince a kid to become a Christian?
Yeah.
Where the people on the other side, it's all they dream about.
Yeah. Well, I think what the
But that's spies and missionaries.
I think what they're in your strong terms there, they're not doing it that way. But I do think they go there saying, I think there are lots of people who go to Christian schools and get teachers' degrees, and they want to teach in the public schools with their goal being, I want to witness to Jesus.
I would say a lot of people do that, but not to witness, but rather to say, I want to be the best teacher for Christ.
I
agree
want
with
that one too.
I want to bring some sanity into the chaos, right? I'm going to bring order into chaos.
Yeah.
I remember some kids came up to me, and it totally caught me off guard when I was teaching middle school. And it was two boys, and they said, we're having a debate. We think you're an atheist because you're smart, right? And you want to know the truth. And it was sort of like, at the time I was in ministry, and I thought, what am I doing wrong as a teacher? I'm teaching math. There's not a lot of opportunities to get off on the subjects of sin and consequences and all, trying to figure out how to solve a two-step equation.
Yeah.
But it sort of sunk me, and I didn't even know what to say.
Yeah.
I realized that I had been trained in church and in school that I was going to be this impartial, person who pursues truth, and I'm going to show that to them, and then the pastor's going to convert them. But that's I don't see it that way anymore.
Okay, that's interesting. I probably do.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. But wait, let me do one more, and then we'll be done with woke.
Okay.
Child evangelism, right?
There it is.
So the evangelists and woke are teachers.
Yeah.
And it's child evangelism.
Right.
It's whatever the different things churches do. They have.
Well, who does it a lot
and-
more than teachers is all these online influencers. They're all aimed at kids.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the number one. If you ask a kid now, what do you want to be when you grow up? Influencer and YouTuber are the number one.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't interact with that very much, though I did just read an article, actually just this morning early, this lady, an influencer, and she has decided she's made a person of herself, an AI.
AI girlfriend.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exact
She made
article I read.
$75,000 in 2 days.
I saw that.
$1 a minute.
And it got me thinking about that. An AI girlfriend. Interesting.
Well, how long till you have an AI friend?
Yeah.
Like your kid just has a friend. Remember when they had the teddy bear and it would talk to you?
Yeah.
Imagine the teddy bears that are coming.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before. Her. I still haven't seen the movie. But and they're talking about the article curing loneliness. I just don't think. I disagree. I don't think it will on two levels. One, humanity doesn't cure loneliness for each other. Loneliness is our estrangement from God at its root. But secondly, you need people face to face. It will never take off. It will have a limited appeal. It will have a certain craze, but it will never be gratifying. I don't fundamentally believe that her premise works. I don't believe that sex dolls will work. It is a person that we want to interact with.
Right.
And I began to think about it a lot in this way because this girlfriend, this AI girlfriend, the article I read, this user, signs up and talks to her, and he just says it was unbelievable how often this girlfriend turned all the conversation to sex.
Yeah.
Even no matter what I asked it. So, and that sells, right?
Yep.
So, but I was thinking about that. So then that's the same way, will they make sex dolls and you won't have to marry to? No, because what's fundamental about that relationship is it's another person. Whether it's a healthy relationship or it's an abusive sexual relationship, it is their personhood before God that is what makes it a valuable destruction or victory.
But we are seeing it as far as a trend. I don't think it'll ever become a majority by any means. But the number of young men who just don't ever care to get married or be in a relationship with women, they see modern women as dysfunctional and hold resentment against them and turn to things like porn or this or that technology and say, I'm fine by myself.
Yeah. So I know that happens, but I think they're very unhappy people.
Oh, for sure.
That way.
Yeah.
They're not gratified.
But what they're turning away from is the risk of failure and rejection, right?
That human God image bearer, it cuts both ways.
Sure.
They can disagree with you.
Yeah.
They can get mad at you.
They can betray you.
They can betray you and hurt you. That's right.
Yeah.
And so, okay, neutral. See, I do think it's neutral. As I thought for a while about being a public school teacher.
Yeah.
And I thought neutral was what I was going to aim at. I was
you want
not,
you want the government to stay out of it kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it wasn't so much government. For me personally, what it was is it wasn't my job to make them Christians. What I was being hired to do was to teach them a subject.
Right.
Now, my Christianity was going to be a part of that. I could no more. You'd have to not be me if you didn't make that. But it's not my job to make them disciples. So I did. So I would be on the other side of what you were thinking.
Well, and that is how I thought about it when I was in public school.
Yeah.
The part of the assumption of that in my mind was that in a liberal democracy, you want an even playing field built by maintained by the government, and let the battle of ideas determine which one is the best.
Yeah.
And if Christianity is a superior way of looking at the world, then it's going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
But what I'm realizing now, or what I believe now, what I've been awakened to, perhaps, is that was a myth perpetuated, I believe, by a Marxian subculture that now that they've taken control for most institutions, they've thrown away all sense of impartiality, and we're going to promote our religion now.
You know where this ends up getting us is the Christian nationalism topic. Because when you said a liberal democracy, when you say that, I should present such and let such and such duke it out. I agree with that, but I see a liberal democracy as theistic, not Christian. So it's bound together by theism, a belief in God, but not necessarily bound together by you have to believe in Christianity.
Right.
But you do, in a sense, a liberal democracy that we set up at least had to believe in a creator God who gave you dignity, who gave me dignity. There are some just laws. There are such things as right and wrong.
Well, that's like
And
the Boy Scouts, right? They're not going to be a Christian organization, but God is part of it.
that's right.
Right?
That's right.
How are the Boy Scouts doing these days?
Well,
Yeah, they're struggling.
yeah, but I don't think that's a fair piece of evidence because I don't think they're struggling. That principle fundamentally worked for the entirety of the Boy Scouts. And you could go, there were Boy Scout troops that said, we're going to do the Christian version. Our troop is Christian.
Yeah.
Another one says, we're going to have a powwow and do a Native American ceremony because it's the great spirit of, and the Boy Scouts said, this is fine. Your troop can do whatever you want. They still believed fundamentally a theistic worldview, and there's right and wrong, and they're teaching them a code, and you do good, and you be truthful, and you be honorable. I think that was functionally accurate. The takedown of Boy Scouts, I don't think was a flaw of that. I think the takedown of Boy Scouts was the woke bully
Yeah.
of LGB at that time only, and
He
Boy
was hanging out in the
Scouts
back.
said okay to it. They
Well,
thought
but it was their Dominion lawsuit. They knew because they have a lot of assets, and that just one massive lawsuit and they're toast.
maybe. Wait, Dominion, you mean in terms of they had things to hide? Is that what you're saying?
Well, so
Or
what
they were protecting the organization?
they were protecting the organization. So
I
you get
agree
a
with
discrimination
you.
lawsuit. You've got so that
But that's different than what Bud Light did. Bud Light went out to preventatively protect.
yeah. Well, they saw
They
their
responsibly protect.
yeah they saw their market share declining, and they said we're going to try this new thing to get a young generation.
And I think that's
they
different.
miscalculated.
The Boy Scouts, they
That's why I'm not saying
succumbed-
it's Bud Light. I'm saying it's the Dominion lawsuit. I'm saying the Boy Scouts were over a barrel. They
I see why you're
so
saying
they had
that way
all
now.
this. They
Gotcha.
had all this.
Yes, I agree with
controversy
you.
coming
Whatever
out
the
with
barrel
abuse
was.
scandals.
Yeah.
And then there was
Yes.
the who. So
Yes.
they relinquished that. Right.
Yes.
So then they said, well, Scouts can be gay, but Scout Masters can't.
Okay,
And
right.
now then they backed off that.
Yep.
And they just and all the time
And
hanging
they're
over their
done.
heads was
It's-
these big name law firms saying, if you get sued, we can't protect you.
Yeah.
And so they just backed themselves into a corner
So
and
then
surrendered.
let's ask this question. If the LGB thing is what the gun held to their head and they backed down, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean... No, I don't want to put it that way. Let me make a statement and you disagree with it or affirm it or modify it.
Okay.
I'll make this statement. I think the reason that gun had power, let's say in what I'm trying to say is they were functioning theistically.
Right.
This gun comes along, which is outside of their theistic system, because what has been lost is this. Christianities don't oppose gay people, but they think that activity is morally wrong.
Right.
Not that it is your choice and I'm okay with it. Actually, no, I think it's a moral wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not being said at all anymore. It's as if I can disagree with you on the issue, but you're okay to do it if that's what you want to do.
Right.
I don't think that's what Christianity says. I think Christianity's, and theistically, it came in that this is a thing that is against nature. This is a not right thing.
Right.
So this gun was not from within the worldview of theism. It was from the outside. The difficulty is that the cultural weight was behind them now. Our culture has shifted. It's not a theistically grounded culture. So when a gun comes in and says, you have to bow to this, they don't have the theistic culture to say, no, we don't. And we'll tough it out.
And if they were a Christian organization, maybe they would have.
And maybe they would have and got thrown to the lions,
Yeah, maybe so.
right? Or maybe not. You never know, right?
Well, and
And
that's
the dilemma.
That's the difference, I think, between saying, well, we want to have a healthy option for young men, young boys to learn leadership and discipline, or saying we're a Christian organization making disciples. Because if you're making disciples and they say you have to stop or else, well, you tell me who I obey, God or man.
Yes, that's right. It's an easier answer for Christians. But I think that's an answer within theism, too. That's my point, is that I think the Boy Scouts could have said,
Yeah, but theism doesn't
no.
have evangelists. Theism
You're
is
right, you're
theism
right.
is where you retreat to if
That's
you
right.
realize
You're right.
Christianity is just too much for me.
It's not evangelizing anybody.
No.
Well, and it's not just that if you realize, I think that's a little unfair because if you're the American settlers, if you're back in the 1700s and you're doing this, and you're sitting in a room with 50 people, so you got a group of people that are Christians, you got a group that are deists, and you got a group that they're agnostic.
Yeah,
And
but
you're trying to make a nation.
in 50 people, you've got 2 that are not Christians.
I don't think that's.
Maybe
I
it's
know
4.
you said that. You think that. I think it's way less. I think it's not. I don't even think it's 50%.
What I'm saying is that the social order in that time, one, especially in New England, where the revolution is beginning, you've got communities that are founded by churches, right? The Massachusetts Bay Colony is all these, and every colony in the Northeast was an attempt. We're going to build the kingdom of God in the New World, okay? And different churches going over there.
Yeah.
And so the political influence that a pastor would have in a local town was as significant or more than the local politicians, right? Because they had the pulpit and the ear of everyone. And if you're in a community where your credibility is largely dependent on what church you attend and your activity in that church, right? Because that's where you're going to be shaking hands with the mayor and the other people. Well, then the pastor of that church bears a lot of weight on the opinions and the direction of that community.
Yeah, I agree. So the church was put in the center of the public square in New England, let's call it.
Well, and in Christian Europe.
Yeah. But I don't think that meant that all the townspeople were embracing of the Christian faith to the same degree. There was a submission to its
No, of course, right.
rulership in a sense. But if you sit in a room of 50 people, I think they're not building a declaration of independence based upon Christianity. It's just not written in there. It is based upon the light of nature. It's based upon a creator. That's as far as they went.
Well, they were, yeah. I mean, I think what they were trying to do is create a document that would be more broad than any church.
Yes, I agree with that.
And that even people who don't go to church could say, yeah, but I see what you're doing.
Yes, I agree with that.
But what they didn't do is say, we're creating a constitution that would function for people who hate God.
Yes, that's right.
And that's where we are now.
That's right. That's exactly the difference. So William Penn can have his strange ideas. Fine, you can be a part of the nation, but go found your own state. Go do it over there.
Well, and that's why you see the talk about creeds, right? That we don't discriminate based on creed.
Yeah.
Meaning denomination.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you're
denomination.
You're the 1868 Baptist.
That's exactly right.
Whatever,
That's what they meant by that. Yeah. So to me, the Boy Scouts didn't run afoul of their theism. It's that the cultural shift made the gun to their head have power that it never had before.
Right.
I still think it was a mistake for them to do this, to say they should have said, we're going to say no, and if it means the Boy Scouts have come to an end, then so be it. That's what I think they should have said.
Right.
Theistically, right?
If they were holding to their true beliefs.
Even just theistic true beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Because according to theism, anyway, yeah.
Well, to nature and nature's God.
Yes, to nature
Natural
and nature
law
gods. Yes, that's
is
exactly
clearly
right.
doesn't support same-sex relationships.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, what else? Anything else you got on here? We're nearing an hour.
Well, so a
LED.
thought came to me yesterday, and I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking
Go.
about miracles and power, and my dad and mom are starting
Miracles and power. Okay, right.
Yeah, they're doing a form of ministry that I've raised hearing about and done a little bit of myself. It's commonly called deliverance ministry.
Okay.
Right. So you're someone's being attacked or maybe consistently demonized.
Yeah.
Okay. And the biblical language is such like a stronghold.
Yeah.
That the enemy has got a spot in you and they're exploiting it
Yeah.
to your detriment. And maybe it's showing signs by addictive behavior, obsessive thoughts or actions, or mental illness of some kind.
Yeah.
And so their ministry, this type of ministry, is going through a form of counseling, but instead of talking through your problems, it's looking for areas of spiritual attack and then counterattacking and establishing the kingdom of heaven in someone's heart, right? Mm-hmm. And they've seen some incredible results from this, and I have too, where really dysfunctional patterns in people's lives have been totally resolved overnight, literally. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was thinking about, if you're reading the Bible, you often see this type of ministry, but more extensive, more like open signs and wonders and miracles and things happening that are, no one can deny. And saying the Bible describes them often as God endorsing the message of those ministers of the gospel by doing these signs and wonders, right? In fact, even in sermons in the book of Acts, they'll say God endorsed Christ by raising him from the dead. So there's this
attested.
The miracles are to show you that God is with them.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're saying.
Moses in particular, that's a big one.
And then occasionally in the Bible, it'll talk about how the enemies of God also, now and in the future, will be putting their own signs and wonders, and like you're saying with Moses, where the Pharaoh's magicians are doing some similar versions of what Moses is doing to show God's power. And the thought occurred to me is, if God is endorsing with power, the enemy is countering with power. If our ministry doesn't have any power behind it, does that mean we're just not even in the fight? If there's a battle raging, if you've got a front line, there's going to be spots at the front line where the actual battle is going, and other places where everybody's regrouping.
Yeah.
Are we just in the regroup? We don't actually know where the battle's raging, and so we might be fighting over here. So that thought came to me: are we even in the fight if we're not seeing a spiritual manifestation of what should be a spiritual war?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's difficult about the question, it's a good question. It has been asked before. The good part of it is that it shows several theological disagreement points.
Yeah.
So signs of the apostles. There are some who say, look, those things were only meant to be for the apostolic age. And taking your argument of attestation, that once Scripture was attested to, then those things fell away, right?
So, but there's signs and wonders in the Old Testament.
But, okay, I'll take their position for a minute.
Yeah,
it's not one I hold,
right.
but I grew up with this one. But I've since departed from it, but probably so you and I are going to come from different backgrounds and angles at this.
Yeah.
But, and so the way we modify might be different. But the argument would be this: yes, they're in the Old Testament, and they're always an attestation of a prophet.
Yeah.
Of a speaker for God.
Right.
So in the Old Testament,
so would they say there's no more prophecy either then? People don't prophesy?
So there's two issues. There's prophesying in terms of I have a word from God, and then there's prophesying that I have a word from God, and this is going to become an inscripturated word that's going to hold for the ages, right?
Okay.
So the question is, where's the book of Elijah? Did Elijah have no prophetic word? There's no book of Elijah. Where are his prophetic words from the Lord?
Okay.
Because they're not inscripturated. In fact, he starts an entire school. Where are any of his prophets' words? They're not. They were all for the moment. And so the question is, what kind of attestation was needed for the prophet of the moment versus the prophet whose words are inscripturated for all time? So it's not an easy thing.
But Elijah does more miracles than most prophets.
Yeah, I know.
So you're saying, so what's the connection between the prophet who's creating scripture and the prophet who's not? Like, how does that connect to miracles?
I think it breaks down ultimately, but there's also something there, I think. I think that it's a good observation, but I personally don't track with it all the way. But I still think the questions are valid questions. And I think it would be this, that are these miracles and wonders, signs and wonders, sign gifts, is there a tie to purposes that are unique, let's call them, whether it is prophetic or inscripturation prophetically?
Yeah.
Or are they tied to the work of God, not necessarily because he's bringing some kind of a word? And that's a difficult question. And so I think where I end up, a modified version is, no, I shouldn't say where I end up. A more attractive version is the one that says the signs and wonders seem to be more prevalent in pagan, unchristianized cultures. And there's some truth to that too.
Well, that wouldn't square with what Jesus wasn't in a pagan culture.
Well, he
was doing massive miracles.
Well,
a Jewish
what do you
culture.
Mean? Yeah, Jewish culture wasn't pagan, but they are surrounded by, they're in a massive amount of Okay, wait, let me backtrack here. You're right. Jewish culture itself was not pagan. Okay, but Jewish culture did have a robust experience and theology of spiritual beings. We that's not the case today. There are
So that
places.
would sound like what you're saying is that the faith of the community, which the Bible describes, would impact God's willingness or ability, maybe both,
Yeah.
to display miraculous signs
Yeah.
and wonders.
I knew a guy who was a cessationist minister, then went to become a missionary, goes to China, and he sees miracles happening.
Yeah.
And he says, I cannot, I changed my mind. But he comes back and he doesn't see them.
Right.
No, I got to account for this.
Well, I think if ever there was a community that responds to God like Jesus' hometown, with skepticism and disdain, America would be it.
Yeah. So I think what you're doing is asking about how do we respond to that disparity.
And I say that, by the way, because it was in Jesus' hometown that it says he could do no miracles.
I know, right?
Yeah, in case anybody.
Yes, right.
I forget we have listeners.
I know. I think that touches on this. I think that's a hard one. I don't know. So with your
So I heard a counterexample, and it just comes to mind, which is, how many miracles did Martin Luther do? How many miracles did William Wilberforce do? None that we know of.
Yeah.
Maybe not even speaking in tongues or other, what seemed like day-to-day spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
So those people are having a massive impact in advancing
for the kingdom,
justice and right relationship with God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I think I don't like the idea what you're thinking through, that if there's no power, then there's no kingdom ministry, because I think it is too far.
Yeah.
But I do think it's right to say, why isn't there things happening? Why aren't things happening? And is there a defect? And I think that's legitimate.
Here's something I've thought of too, is there are a lot of miracles I've seen, as far as, like, I've seen YouTube videos that look like, that's phony, but I've also seen them where you think, man, that was a real encounter with a spiritual being. That was a real miracle. Someone really got healed. Well, that's never going to be on the news. That's never going to trend on Twitter.
That's
Do you know
true.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those things, because we still function within a world system that is, the prince of the power of the air is at work in the hearts of those who are disobedient. We shouldn't expect that godless media is going to promote God's message and his presence.
I think one of the other difficulties is if you run with the statement, if there's no power, there's no ministry, then here's what can happen. Not that it has to happen, but it can, and that is you're going to create power. You're going to create
you're going to conjure.
You're going to conjure. And you're also then going to condemn. If you don't agree with me, then you don't have ministry. If you don't have miracles happening,
right?
And it's going to create an extremeness that is is not healthy.
I don't agree with my statement.
I know
mostly
you don't.
I'm saying the thought came to my mind,
right?
But part of what the statement was not that's not ministry, but rather that it's not the front line.
Yeah.
It would be like if you said, "I'm at war, but I never hear a gunshot."
Okay, so what about this then? Let's say
there are a lot of wars or battles that are won.
Well, wait, let me take your statement.
Table.
Not on the front line. So when Jesus is in Nazareth, then you'd say he's not on the front line?
Maybe.
What? Okay, that's a possibility. Yeah. What about this? It's the front line, but that's a loss. We're going to go fight over here instead.
Yeah, you just were treated, essentially, right?
Because there is this thing. There's no honor. Your faith. They did not have faith.
Right.
There is this role of faith. That's a strange scripture, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's strange. It's because I think it creates tension points that nobody really knows what to do with.
Right.
And if you back away from it, it seems like you're back away from something that God wants you to address.
Yeah.
If you chase it full on, you can end up in crazy land.
And
you say that the reason you have diabetes, Mike, is because you don't have faith. If you wanted to be rid of it, you just have faith. It's all
right.
And now I'm crushed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the way I think of it is, you can't plug in a lamp and say, well, the reason the lamp turned on is because you didn't plug it in. It's like, well, there's also a switch and there's power.
Yeah.
And there's like
that's right.
the electrical grid. You know, there's so many more layers. And so to try to simplify it down like that, I think is foolish.
And then I think the other dynamic is we live in America. I do think unbelief is rampant. And I think there's another factor, material. Is wealth, the factor of wealth. I think that wealth blinds in a way we do not have any idea of. We're immune to it.
But if America, or as America, veers away from loving God or caring about him, maybe toward hating him even, to me that means we'd be more ripe for miraculous
we will
signs
become
and
that.
wonders, right? Because
I
it
agree.
would become like a foreign nation.
That's
who's
right.
never
I
heard the
think that's
gospel.
true. I think if we were being strategic warfare-wise, we would be looking at what's happening, and this gets to the Christian nationalism. Should we recover? How do we now fight, so to speak?
Yeah. Christendom 2.0. That's what I heard somebody say.
I think my own belief is that the church should be very optimistic in the face of very disappointing turns by our nation. And the great optimism is that we have opportunities before us that are going to parallel the first century. And that's a tremendous time of opportunity. Now, is it good that we got there? No, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Well,
we should be faithful to God, even our country to its theism.
And what the first century church did is laid the foundation for the third and fourth century church.
Yeah, that's right.
To conquer the Roman Empire and spread into the known world.
Yeah. For good things and bad.
Yeah. Well, and part of the question with the Christian nationalism is, clearly our culture has taken a wrong turn. The question is, how far back in the journey do we need to go and then take the right turn? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do we need to go back to the founding of America? Do we need to go back to the Reformation? Like, how far back are we talking?
Yeah.
What are we trying to build here?
Yeah.
And that's the question being debated in the circles I follow.
That's
everywhere.
true. And mine are different questions than yours. We will have to. So we've skipped like 2 weeks, or maybe we missed 3 weeks. I don't remember. Yeah. But if we get back in, and you got big stuff coming up in your life. But if we get back, we need to get back in a role, and then we need to schedule the Christian nationalism. Probably discussion 1 and discussion 2.
Just keep it on the burner, and we can keep coming.
Or we could just nibble at it every episode.
That's right.
Nibble at it and never really get to it. No.
Well, we're well past an hour.
We are. We should break it down. Okay. That was Woke and Bullies and a few other things sprinkled in. We don't really know what the next topic is, do we?
Yeah.
We've got some things we've been wanting to talk about. Stay tuned next time
where we will solve all the problems.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're still listening, we appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform, YouTube, everywhere really, right? Spotify, it's on all the things. And if you want to know more about us, go check us out on those. Well, actually, and share it with somebody. I think that would be the nice thing.
Yeah.
Be like, man, Mike and Luke talked about this, and it made me mad. You should listen to it. All right, we'll see you next time.